Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time zone you are in right now. Welcome back to Sip and Talk, and cheers to a really long week.
Cheers to that. I mean, handing me a freshly mixed classic American bourbon is definitely the right way to start this off.
Right. Well, living here in New York, where the real estate market is just, completely unhinged at this point. I actually almost spit out my drink yesterday reading the news.
Oh, I think I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. So Trump was speaking at the Faith and Freedom Coalition convention, and he delivered this just like masterclass of a political meme. He literally said, if I wanted to do communism, it's too easy. You want a free house? No problem. I'll just take it from someone else.
Man, that is just so him. Taking this incredibly complex century-old ideology and turning it into a free stuff punchline.
Exactly. Though, honestly, as New Yorkers, if there was actually a line for a free house, it would probably stretch all the way down to the bottom of the Hudson River.
Oh, easily. Past the Statue of Liberty, for sure. But, gently swirling my glass here and thinking about it, Trump is kind of a master of political theater. On the surface, that line is just a jab to get his conservative base fired up, especially going after progressive Democrats who have been winning some of these recent primaries.
Yeah, it's a very calculated rhetoric.
It is. But when that clip went viral, it actually sparked a much deeper, really fascinating thought experiment in geopolitical circles. And it really exposes how communist propaganda actually operates, like on a systemic level.
Which is exactly the core of our conversation today on Sip and Talk. Because when we talk to people in Washington or out in the tech scene in Silicon Valley, this Leninist logic always comes up. It's this strategy of making beautiful utopian promises, but using pure, brutal methods to achieve them.
Right. The methods are the reality.
Exactly. And that system is causing absolute disasters domestically right now. And what's really concerning is that they are actively trying to export this formatting system, basically, to our most critical tech ally across the Pacific. I'm talking about Taiwan.
Yeah, and this is where we really have to look at the objective reality versus the ultimate institutional lie. Because CCP propaganda constantly pushes this narrative that Taiwan desperately wants to join them. Like they are just waiting to be brought back into the fold.
Which is just statistically completely false.
Right. But if you look at the reality, this whole conflict isn't even about unification in the traditional sense. It's about the complete annihilation of a functioning democratic system. I mean, think about it. Even if Taiwan's Republic of China system, the ROC, somehow led the unification, Beijing would never, ever allow it.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That thought experiment is wild. Like unification as just outright annihilation and formatting. So, do we have the authoritative data from Bloomberg and Foreign Affairs pulled up? Because we are going to need the hard numbers for this.
I do. I just set my glass down, swiped open the tablet, and we are good to go. So, Sip and Talkers, pour yourself a drink if you haven't already, because we are heading into some serious, hardcore, rational analysis today.
And just a quick disclaimer before we get into the heavy stuff. You guys know we always maintain our tradition of independent, critical thinking here.
Always.
We aren't taking sides in U.S. politics, and we absolutely are not criticizing or discriminating against any country or its people. We are just looking objectively at factual data and how these massive systems operate. And obviously, any mention of economic trends is just for factual context, not financial or investment advice.
Definitely not investment advice. Okay, so let's transition from the comedic absurdity of that free house meme and dissect why this specific rhetoric is such an effective weapon in U.S. politics right now. It really exposes the foundational flaws of Marxist theory.
It does, and the data from the last few weeks is just staggering. Trump is using this to paint the Democratic establishment as, quote, core communists, to rally the conservative and religious right for the 2026 midterms.
Yeah, I saw the tracking on this. He mentioned the word communism, 81 times in just 2 weeks?
81 times, yes.
Yeah.
Including that massive July 3rd speech at Mount Rushmore. It is a very deliberate strategy, and it sparks a really intense two-sided debate.
Right. So let's break down the two perspectives. Perspective A, the supporters, they say this meme is brilliant because it exposes the zero-sum reality of extreme welfare policies.
Meaning the government freebies aren't actually free?
Exactly. They argue that when the government promises free stuff, all it really means is crushing taxes, runaway inflation, and completely destroying market incentives. The bill always comes due.
But then you have perspective B. The critics look at this and argue it's basically a revival of McCarthyism. They say politicians are purposefully taking basic social safety nets, things like rent control or public housing, and conflating them with actual totalitarianism.
Just fear marketing.
Yeah, they use this fear marketing to manipulate voters and distract them from the real issue, which is that housing affordability is a massive systemic crisis.
Right. It's a lot easier to yell about communism than to fix zoning laws. But it does force us to look at the gap between theory and reality. Because Karl Marx's original ideal, abolishing private property and distributing everything based on need, it sounds like a utopia on paper.
It sounds lovely.
Yeah. But how does it actually work in reality? Because human beings are involved.
Well, the brutal reality of the implementation is where it all falls apart. It's a three-step process. Step one, you have to take the property. You have to forcibly seize it.
Which usually involves a lot of violence.
Always. Then step two, you distribute it via the party apparatus, which means you need a massive centralized bureaucracy. And step three is just, shared poverty. Because the second you remove the reward for hard work, the incentives just completely vanish.
It's the classic economic calculation problem. Mises and Hayek talked about this decades ago. It's a fundamental trap. Without market prices, a central planner is flying completely blind.
Oh, absolutely. Like, if you don't have price signals, how do you know what people actually want or need?
Right. You have a ton of steel. Should you make shovels or should you make cars? In a free market, the price of cars goes up if people need them, so you make cars. In a planned economy, some guy in a central office just guesses.
And usually guesses wrong. But I hear this pushback a lot, especially living in the tech scene. People say, well, what if we use AI?
Oh, yeah, the techno-utopian argument.
Exactly. They argue that we have massive data collection now, so a supercomputer could just solve the economic calculation problem. But the issue is that human desire is highly subjective. An AI can track past purchases, but it cannot quantify your specific subjective desire for a product tomorrow. Prices capture that invisible human intensity. Without them, you just end up with, a surplus of shovels and a shortage of food.
Which leads us to Milovan Elis and his book, The New Class. Because eliminating capitalists didn't actually create equality, it just swapped them out for a new, totally unaccountable ruling class of party bureaucrats.
Yes, bureaucrats who monopolize all the power and resources. It leads to absolute control. And that is exactly how you get these horrific systemic failures, like the historical famines where millions starved because there was no market mechanism to course correct a bad central plan.
And we should add some quick nuance here. Modern Nordic democratic socialism is entirely different. We aren't talking about that. The Nordic model is fundamentally a free market capitalist engine. It's just equipped with high welfare breaks.
Right. They haven't abolished private property.
Exactly. It's not the abolition of private property. It's just a different way of taxing and spending within a market system.
So if the actual theory inevitably leads to a monopolized, unaccountable bureaucracy, what does that look like in practice today? Because we are seeing systemic collapse in real time. We have to transition from historical theory to the devastating events happening right now in China.
Yeah, the unfolding polycrisis. The July 2026 floods in Guangxi caused by Typhoon Maysak were just tragic to watch.
Truly heartbreaking. The Lulan and Yunbiao reservoirs breached, and Gigang City was flooded up to 7 meters deep.
7 meters. That is incredibly deep for an urban area.
It is. And the human element of this is just horrifying. There were over 10,000 students and teachers trapped in their school buildings. The water was so high they had to retreat to the 3rd floor, and they were stuck there for 2 whole days without power, without clean water, and without food.
I was reading some of the desperate pleas for help that people were posting on WeChat and Xiaohongshu. There was one specific post about 22 young boys having to share just 10 steamed buns over the course of those 2 days.
Oh my God, that is just, it's terrifying.
It really is. And the official reports eventually noted 39 dead and 9 missing. But, given the scale of the water, it's hard to know the full reality.
And if you expand the scope, it's not just Guangxi. Look at the rare June 2026 floods in the Taklamakan Desert.
Yeah, flooding in a literal desert.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Completely destroyed infrastructure.
Yeah.
And yes, climate change is a factor, but it was hugely compounded by poor, unchecked development by the state.
So here's my pointed question for you. In a system that has absolute centralized power, why is basic infrastructure like a dam failing so catastrophically, and why is no one ever held accountable when it does?
Well, it all goes back to that unaccountable structure we were talking about earlier. A lot of these reservoirs were rushed during the Great Leap Forward in the 1950s. And today, Local governments are in the middle of a massive financial winter. There is a huge real estate crash happening, so there's literally no municipal money for basic maintenance.
So they just let the infrastructure rot.
Yeah, because the incentive structure is completely twisted. Local officials only answer upwards. They don't answer to the voters, they answer to the party bosses.
Right, so they fund things that make them look good to the boss.
Exactly. Performative, politically correct projects. They will spend millions on digital surveillance networks and facial recognition cameras because that shows they're maintaining control. But invisible infrastructure maintenance, fixing a dam, that doesn't get you a promotion.
Until the dam breaks. But then, when disaster actually strikes, why isn't the priority on massive rescue operations?
Because the priority immediately shifts to stability maintenance. That is the actual term. They focus on suppressing the news, silencing the victims, and deleting the posts online. The responsibility is diluted all the way to the top, which means no local official ever takes the blame. They just write off a collapsed dam as, quote, extreme weather.
It is entirely about protecting the regime's image. By the way, there is a fantastic video resource on YouTube called 2026, The Great Reversal, Taiwan Rises, China Falls. It is a really great resource to understand this structural decoupling and the economic crisis over there.
I've seen it. It's a great breakdown. And it brings us to a really critical point, because a system that is failing its own people facing this kind of polycrisis, it has to look outward for survival. It needs legitimacy, and it desperately needs an external enemy to distract the public.
Which brings us directly to their ultimate target, Taiwan, our key tech ally.
Yes.
Yep.
And this is where we have to unmask the propaganda, because CCP propaganda constantly pushes this narrative, even to Western media, that Taiwanese people secretly want to return to China.
Which is just a massive institutional lie.
Completely. We have the hard data.
Yeah.
Long-term polling from the NCCU Elections Study Center shows that almost 90% of Taiwanese people want to either maintain the status quo or actively seek independence.
90%.
Yeah. The desire to actually be ruled by Beijing is statistically microscopic.
So let's do a radical thought experiment. What if history flipped? What if Taiwan had the power to lead the unification? What if they offered to bring their democracy, their multi-party system, their free press, and their tech innovation to the mainland? Would Beijing agree to that?
Absolutely not. They would never agree. They would likely launch a military crackdown just to stop the idea from spreading.
Why?
Because the CCP's definition of unification has absolutely nothing to do with shared heritage or bringing people together.
Right. It's about formatting and annihilation.
Exactly. You have to understand the Leninist struggle logic. It is a zero-sum game. There is no such thing as coexistence in their worldview. Taiwan's mere existence as a prosperous, free democracy is a literal threat to the CCP's core narrative.
Because it proves that Chinese culture doesn't actually require an authoritarian regime to thrive.
Bingo. So when they say unification, what they actually mean is the complete annihilation of the ROC. It's about formatting Taiwan's democratic systems into a digital authoritarian state. We are seeing the exact same playbook that happened to Hong Kong.
The exact same playbook. They come in, dismantle the independent institutions, crush the free press, and format the society. Which is why you see global media, like the Washington Post and The Economist, framing this completely differently now.
Yeah, they aren't treating it like a localized territorial dispute anymore.
No, they are framing it as a clash between democracy and authoritarianism.
And that explains the intense pushback from Taiwan and the free world. It isn't just politics or diplomatic maneuvering. It is a basic, almost biological defense mechanism.
Yeah, you are fighting against having your entire way of life consumed and erased.
Exactly. It's existential.
Man, this has been an incredibly heavy but fascinating conversation today. It really shows how you can draw a straight line from a viral political meme about a free house to the brutal realities of authoritarian systems collapsing and lashing out.
It is a lot to process.
Yeah.
And I want to leave all of you Sip&Talkers out there with a final provocative thought to mull over.
Lay it on us.
Think about this. When an authoritarian system is facing severe economic downturns, real estate crashes, and climate crises, all simultaneously, how long can that regime actually survive by relying solely on digital surveillance and stability maintenance?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right. I mean, how much pressure can build up before the valve completely bursts?
I guess we are going to find out in real time. And, just to reiterate a warm closing here, today's show was really just an objective, factual exploration. We want to encourage independent thinking.
Absolutely. This is entirely devoid of any animosity toward any nation's citizens.
Yeah.
We're talking about governments and systems,
Yeah.
not people.
Exactly. Well, don't forget to subscribe to the Sip and Talk podcast if you haven't already. And before we go, we have to give a massive, enthusiastic shout out to our good friend Mickey and his YouTube channel.
Yes. Oh my gosh, Mickey to life.
Mickey to life, exactly. He is currently traveling from Spain to Portugal right now, and his new vlog is going to be hilarious and just full of crazy adventures.
I cannot wait to see it. He is so funny. You guys definitely need to go check it out.
Highly recommend. So go search for Mickey to life on YouTube. All right, Sip and Talkers, thanks for hanging out with us today. See you next time.
See you next time.